alienation, in which my son was taken out of my life, and that the Kafkas and the family courts have all missed deliberately. In fact, they've ignored it. On the 15th of April 2022, my life had been amazing for 10 years. I had an amazing son who had been in the same private school for 7 years, and his mum was wonderful, and we were best friends, and everything was amazing. I lived up one road away, they lived there. We've been living like that since 2015. Beautiful. My son we'd even done the 2 houses thing for positivity. You know, you got 2 houses now. My son didn't even know we'd split up, you know. No one really did. We just carried on our life, but we just had a nice time. Anyway, on the 15th of April, I turn up to my son and his mum's address to move them to their new home, which had been refurbished for them, and while they were living in my flat. Just remember, they were living in my flat for 6 months while that refurb was done. Anyway, I turned up on the 15th of April to move them to their new home, which she had actually WhatsApped me about the day before. I arrived at 9:10 a.m. She made me a cup of tea. I transferred her £300 because we had used the lads the day before to remove her stuff from storage for the move. Although that's her cost, I paid everything, so I just sent her that 300 quid. I'm sitting there with a cup of tea at 9:20, and the police come in the front door. I had no idea why the police were there. All right, but I didn't like the fact police were in property with my son, but that's the way it is. I said, all right. They said, yeah, hi there, we've had an allegation. I said, from who? They took the mother into the bedroom because they split up, and they said, yeah, the mother's made an allegation that you smashed through the door. Because they'd just spoken to the mother, you know, when they walked in the door, they spoke to the mother. Then they took me to one side and said, yeah, she's made an allegation you smashed through the door. I said, what are you talking about? Just turned up to move them. The door is perfect. But because she had made the allegation, I was arrested for smashing through a door. Now, what's interesting about that allegation is this. In criminal court, a year later, because that's how long it takes to go to court, I have someone that can question her on my behalf, because I'm not allowed to question her because she's my son's mother and she made the allegation against me. So I have to have someone question her. They've only got 7 minutes, so you know. So it isn't about the history of the case. This is proving that I never smashed through a door. So the question asked was this. If Mr. Dean arrived at 9:10 a.m, but the facts show that you rung the police at 8:50, which meant that my son's mother rung the police 20 minutes before I arrived, but then made an allegation when they arrived that I smashed through a door. Something she couldn't possibly know. And when questioned about that in court, they said, why did you ring the police at 8:50? She said, I didn't want an argument, which has got nothing to do with smashing through a door. And when said Mr. Dean didn't come over to have an argument, he came over to move you, I can only assume that the argument you're referring to is the argument you may have had if you were about to tell Mr. Dean you were moving his son to Worcester. So rather than that, you've made an allegation he smashed through a door, something you couldn't possibly have known at 8:50, and you've taken his son to Worcester. She accepted that in criminal court, and I was found not guilty, which means to this date, I've done absolutely nothing at all wrong to either my son's mum or my son. Yet it's now 2 years, 5 months since I heard or spoken to my son. And let me tell you some more premeditation. On the 15th of April 2022, it's the middle of half term. Remember, my son's been at the same school for 7 years. So when I was arrested on the 15th, the bail conditions were I can't contact the mother. I've got to get a third party to do it, but normal child contact. So my brain said, well, I don't know what she's up to, but anyway, it doesn't matter. I've got my son there. So I got my mum to ring her. And right up until the 1st of May, despite my mum ringing 3 times to get my son to call me, I hadn't heard from my son. I've got to be honest, it was then that I started to think, what's going on here? But it didn't matter, because my son was starting school again on the 1st of May. So on the 1st of May at 9 AM, I rung the school. Because remember, I'm a father, so I know he's going to be back at school. Nothing can happen without someone talking to me. And I was told at 9 AM that someone's going to ring me back from the school. So that's fine. I never got a call back. On the 2nd of May, I rang the school again at 9 AM to make sure my son was at school. And I was told that someone was going to ring me back. I didn't hear from anybody. I rang at 3 o'clock that afternoon, and I was told the head teacher had left. On the 3rd of May, I insisted, without fail, I know what's going on with my son. And the headmaster come on the phone, he said, "I'm just sorry to tell you that your son has been removed from the school." My son was actually removed, and this is premeditation for you. So not only has my son's mum made a false allegation, on the 16th of April, one day after her false allegation, she sent an email to my son's school claiming a child issue and that she has to remove my son from the school. The school have since told me, because that was sent in the middle of half term, there was no one there to deal with that email. And when they come back, they took, despite knowing me 7 years, because it's an email from the mum citing a child issue, they had to take advice on that email. And the advice they were given for a couple of days was, don't tell the father. So on the 3rd of May, when he told me my son had been removed, I was in total shock. Now I'm going to say something even worse. So bearing in mind my son was taken on the 15th of April 2022 in the middle of half term, I was then amazed, totally amazed after 2 days of ringing schools in the Worcester area, to find out that my son had been re-schooled at a little middle school, the little schools they go to before senior school, on the 1st of May. How did that happen? He was removed on the 16th of April by email in half term, yet somehow was already schooled in Worcester on the 1st of May in a new school. No mention of it to me at all. I've never had that explained. My only thought is that it had already been arranged before the steal. Yeah, this is the worst thing about this. My son was then re-schooled again, without my knowledge, on the 1st of September. Starting at a senior school. I spoke to the headmaster. Remember, there was no restrictions on me then. No restraining orders, nothing. I spoke to the headmaster. He said, your son is starting here and you're welcome to come to the school. On the 4th of September 2022, that same headmaster rang me to say that he's spoken to the mother of my son, informed her that I'm welcome, and she's just removed my son from the school and is going to homeschool him. None of these things have ever been mentioned by Kafkas in any report, ever. The family court ignored me totally every time I brought any of this up. It was all in my evidence, yet totally ignored. And on the 14th of December 2023, in my final court case, contact centres weren't even allowed, due to the mother stating on paper how scared her and my son are. Despite telling the courts and Kafkas there's been no history, no police allegations, nothing at all, and this whole thing is simply a premeditated move to steal my son, live in her dead mum and dad's house in Worcester, because the one thing I haven't told you is her dad died in March 2022, just 1 month before my son's removal, and she never told me. Despite saying this is a premeditated steal of my son to live in her dead mum and dad's house in Worcester, clearly just by the email stating a child issue, which there never was one. One day after leaving my flat, it was all ignored. And I was told I can write my son a letter once a month. I haven't heard, seen, spoken, loved, cuddled, kissed, spoken to my beautiful son since the 15th of April 2022. And I hold Kafkas and the family court system completely and utterly responsible.
If you like Deano stories and you want more, and you've got stories of your own that you want told, get in contact. and we can sort something out.
Your first little wobble on the small tiny feet, your first horse